Uh, Good morning, all. It feels like I should be. Um, I've been sitting outside the meeting waiting to 9, but doesn't it feel like we should be enjoying our summer? I know we're 12-month people. I know it's almost about the year, but just if we're off camera, it's like I kind of feel like, don't we kind of feel like we deserve like a month or two to kind of decompress, to kind of like gather ourselves, to kind of feel like I never have the time to plan for the next year because I feel like does the school year ever end?
It
Doesn't
seems
feel
not
that
for us.
way.
It seems like not for us. Tyrone, make it happen.
Well, if I could get that wand from Maleficent, maybe we can do something to change how things are. Nevertheless, I guess AJ is coming on soon, and
Yes,
he'll
you
have
should.
an opportunity to ask everyone what they're doing for their summer vacation, so we can at least act as if we have something downtime that we're all enjoying.
Yeah. Just send him a message. He knows about the meeting, so he might be having
Yeah,
issues.
I didn't know if the time change threw him off, or if the time change was because of other transportation issues that just made this a better time.
It does for drop off. Even though I know it's summer, but I guess we should get in the habit of it being at 9 a.m. And he's a chair,
Okay.
so times can
Well,
change.
okay. I can't speak for the complexity of the meetings, but I will admit that I certainly enjoy these meetings ending by 10, so that you can have a sense that you still have some of your morning. So I hope. So I was okay with the 8:30 because it gave people a chance to get done with the meeting and still feel like they had some morning left in their day. So I'm hoping if we start at 9, we can still find a way to end at 10. I may be again needing the wand to make that happen.
We
But
can try.
Let
Let me just check on a few board members here.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, I know it's always when you have 9 board members, they're all over the place, either have kid drop off or work. So it's like better to have it early, so then you could get on with your work day without getting in trouble with the boss. And then afternoons can be easier for some, difficult for others. So it's all over, or evening sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, given my current situation, I'm sliding. I've always been a little bit more of an advocate of that afternoon, early evening, mostly because one, I can get some level of work done and you can leave work a little bit early. The other thing is it feels like other people, community, or other people who need to chime in better at the end of their workday, I would think.
All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to check. Hi, Francois. I'm going to check on AJ. Give me 1 second.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, Francois. How's your summer been?
Oh, it's been interesting.
Okay.
A lot
Sorry,
of
we
rain,
haven't.
but I mean,
Yeah.
we all need rain every now and then. How are you? How's your
Yeah, I'm
summer?
good. I was kind of I guess ranting while we were talking here about it feels like we don't feel like we're on 12-month school and don't seem to have any downtime from any of this. So I was hoping people had a summer, got some element of summer. And
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
morning.
My apologies. Is everyone okay? Everyone good? Thumbs up?
Yeah, yeah, AJ, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there,
Pastor.
man. I'm good.
I
I'm
was,
good.
yeah, I was saying before you got here that hopefully you asked about summer vacation because I was feeling like this feels like 12-month school where there's no downtime. But hoping we got some summer out of this. People got a vacation out of this somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get much, but I certainly had some good times. One day good times, kind of thing. And,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
1 or 2 days kind of thing. But listen, I believe I'm late, so let's go ahead and get started. Christina, are we? Is everyone here that needs to be here?
Yes, mainly
Okay.
Dr. Silver.
All right, cool. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started, and I just want to thank everyone for being on. I'm not sure if we're recording yet. Are we recording yet?
Yes, we are.
All right, great. So I want to welcome everyone to the Monday, August 7th, Hartford Board of Education policy meeting, and I'm joined by my colleagues on the board member Tyrone Walker and board member Francois Dristo Ledger. And I am excited about policy, and I want to set the standard of why I believe policy is important. The main two functions of the Board of Education, there's really three in my mind, but the main two are finances. We create the finances and the budget for the Board of Education in Hartford Public Schools. And also we set policy. And the third is manage and supervise the superintendent. So as policy chair, I just wanted to be known that I take this committee serious, as it is a primary function of our responsibilities on the Board of Education. And this board, I believe, is probably one of the most stable boards that we probably have seen in a while. And I want to bring public confidence and confidence in my colleagues that we take this very serious. I know that Dr. Silver takes this serious. I certainly know that Christina, Mr. Walker, and Francois, and Jesse Sugarman, and everyone on this end takes this very serious. So I just want to put that in the atmosphere. This is not one of those fly-by-night committees. We actually work and set policy in a meaningful way. With that being said, I would like to hand this over to Dr. Silver, just to lead us through our agenda. I think we have a very good agenda, as we pre-met last week. There are some things, and we actually have a really good schedule of some things that we're going to be doing coming up this year. So Dr. Silver, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. And such important work, because it does guide the decisions that we make in our schools and how we ensure that we are supportive and encouraging and nurturing to our community. So thank you so much for that, Pastor AJ. I'm going to share my screen, and I have our slide deck here, which kind of holding steady with familiar things. No, you're all the way over there. There we go. Okay, so today on our agenda, we have a first reading to remove two policies. In our last Board of Education meeting, we did have a second reading on policy 5124/6142, reporting to parents. And in that policy, you could see embedded all of the links to these two policies below. So CAVE, in their audit of our work, did identify that these two policies could be integrated and updated into a reporting to parents policy. So that is exactly what we did, and our board did a great job of all of that review and integration of those two policies. And with the second reading of bylaw 9312 in our last Board of Education meeting, the second reading and adoption, what this change allows us to do is to also remove old policies from our manual that are redundant or obsolete. Excuse me. So we are here to remove these two policies, 5122 and 5123, and we may have them open here. 5112. So many things I want to share with you this morning. So, okay, let me just open that policy. So this is the policy reporting to parents. It was updated in November of 2005, and we did integrate this content into our, our reporting to parents policy that our Board of Education approved in our last board meeting. So you can see where all of the integration happened with this policy 5123. This so this is language taken directly from the old policy and brought into the new policy 5122, and you can see how integrated that is. And so what we need to do for a first reading is to bring policy 5122 and 5123 to our board for a first reading to delete these policies from or remove these policies from our existing manual. And I turn this back over to you, Reverend AJ, to see if there's any questions.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think this is pretty, pretty straightforward. I don't think it requires a lot of discussion. You know, Dr. Silver just basically, what we're doing is just replacing policy and taking away and adding to in our last meeting. So are there any questions on this?
Yeah, Pastor AJ, I was trying to raise my hand there. So I couldn't quite get to the hand raise, but yeah, if you let me ask a question, this is more for
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're recognized. Go ahead.
Yeah, this Dr. Silver, this is more for my education, because I was a little confused. But one, I totally endorse the idea of removing redundant policies. To me, it's one of the tasks of, you know, a committee to at least show that it has a practice to add policies as needed, and to remove policies was at least showing that we're reading and understanding what we have as policies. The first reading, I was a little confused. We just passed the policy, and I thought when we passed it, we understood we were combining and joining some other policies together. So, you know, does it require first and second reading? Is there some process that says we can't just say, yeah, we know we just passed it, we know it's in there, we can see that it's in there, and just kind of bring it up for actual vote versus having to go 2 cycles? So just educate me. I may be missing something in the practice required.
Okay, so I am following the protocol of our Board of Education, where we do bring our policies for first and second reading to ensure that our public has, you know, our community has ample time to be aware of the revisions and refinements and the work that's going on in the policy committee. So, but
Okay.
I can confirm with CABE, if you'd like, we did not, in the language we adopted, revising the policy to allow us to remove a policy, we did not add language that the removal could be done immediately.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I get that. Yeah, if we're using the first and second reading as a way of notifying the community, then okay, that makes sense then, because I do agree that for policy, people seem to need a lot of reminding because it's not immediately apparent when policies get changed. So, okay, that sticking with that approach makes sense, even for something as routine as removing a redundant policy.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for your question. Any other questions?
This is Francoise. I just have something to say, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Go for it.
So, good morning, everyone. I just wanted to say that we have, you know, systems in place and procedures in place, and sometimes it may seem redundant. Sometimes it may seem like, you know, why do we need this? And other times we see why we need, you know, certain procedures in place. So I think that even though it may seem redundant, even though it may seem that, you know, why are we doing this? Why do we have to go through these extra steps that are already in place? I think that we should keep that, because there may be something that we may notice during that during those extra steps that we take. So I just wanted to say that I respect and I trust the process because the process works and it's been working. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francois, for that. And this is a process, and you know, we are following the process, and it works for not only board members but for our community. Dr. Silver, I think we're ready to move forward as swiftly as possible.
Okay, thank you so much, Pastor AJ, and thank you for the questions. They're excellent questions, and the questions that are lifted are raised help our community to understand the work that we're doing. Our next item for our first reading is a recodification. The policy on bullying prevention and intervention, which is also called our climate policy. Right now, there was significant legislation that was passed that brings changes to the climate policy, but and we do want to do that work in the year coming up. But one piece of work that we need to do is to just recode this policy. It does overlap with our updated medical advisor policy that we adopted in June of 2023. So the number overlaps. The policy itself is identified as on our policy calendar for the coming year, and we're going to review that policy calendar. And we are continuing to follow and leverage the audit information when CABE audited our policy manual. So this is important work. And so what we're going to do, currently the policy is numbered 5141, and we're going to change that policy to 5131.911. And that is in alignment with the numbering codification system that CABE maintains. And I am going to open this policy to show you that right now, all we are focusing on is this number, changing from 5141 to 5131.911. There was a typo in here too, so that was revised, but that's not a substantive change. The recodification also is not a substantive change. It's just changing that number. I'm sure I will see the typo in a minute. 5131.9. There it is. There's an S in subdivision, so that was removed. And there is the, again, renumbering of this policy to align with the recommendations from CABE. So we will identify, should we successfully go through a first and second reading, just this recodified policy. And by recodifying this policy, this will allow us to add the policy to our manual and not create confusion with duplicate numbers on policies. So that is an overview of the recoding of the bullying and prevention and intervention policy, because it does overlap with the medical advisor policy that we adopted in June. And I turn this back over to you, Pastor Johnson, for any questions.
Thank you for that. Any questions from my colleagues or any comments? All right, seeing none, I think that we can move forward, Dr. Silver. Again, these policies that you see before you, they're just minor changes and, just minor edits to make sure that things don't overlap and that we have everything neatly placed in our policy. So Dr. Silver, I think we can move forward.
Great, thank you so much. Chairman Johnson, the discussion portion of our meeting, I'm sorry, there's a couple links here. One is to a legislative update, which you should have received. It is available on our agenda. I do want to point out the video, which is available on CTN, which is the Connecticut Network. When you click on this, this is the video of the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education briefing on the 2023 legislative session. So each year during the legislative session, different laws are changed and revised and passed, and CABE puts together a briefing on all the policies that impact education in the state of Connecticut. So this is a link here, and you can watch this video at your leisure. And I'm not sure exactly how long it is. Okay, oh, okay, so I have it in two places, and I don't see. Okay, it looks like it's 2 hours long, and that is, there's Patrice McCarthy right there. So she is the executive director at CABE, and she is also an attorney and reviews the update, gives us all an update of the legislation and statute changes that impact education during the most recent session. So we are very appreciative of this. In addition to the video that we can watch, and that is available on, like I said, Connecticut Network. So you can access this if you want to look at the Connecticut Network records all kinds of debates and components of our legislative process, and people can go and look up different items, different events that are posted on the Connecticut Network, and watch our lawmakers in action if you'd like. Going back to this, we have our agenda. We have a legislative update, and this is from CABE. And what it does is, this happened in June, and there's Executive Director and General Counsel McCarthy's name, and also Sheila McKay, who works at CABE, Senior Staff Associate. And what they've done is they've compiled all of their highlights, and they provide us with information about the PA. For example, I'll just take this one example. PA stands for Public Act. And then the number next to it, 23, indicates the year in which the Public Act was passed. So 2023. And this is 2023-1. And this Public Act has to do with, just like many legislative items, a lot of different things. So this Public Act 23-1 is concerns an act for school lunches, funding for that, creating a Center for Sustainable Aviation, also addresses public education funding, bottle deposits, state positions and the posting of state job openings, and bond covenant restrictions and budget reserve funds. So what's helpful about watching the video is you get the highlights about what really applies, and certainly if you're curious, you're welcome to dig into some of the nuances of the language of the legislation itself. But then they do summarize distribution of special education excess cost grant and state agency placement excess cost grants. And this portion of the overview does describe how there is a tiering system for special education funding, and school districts that have less resources and more challenge in their communities, financial challenge in their communities, they're placed along a continuum, 3 tiers, and schools with the greatest challenge actually receive the greatest proportion of funds. So that is what this language speaks to. Now, I'm not going to go through item by item all of these things, but I did prepare a little summary here, which kind of highlights some of the things, and I really want to share these with you just so that you're well informed as you review these documents and the resources, and maybe watch the video. So Public Act 23-167, the Connecticut State Department of Education has been charged with creating and providing a new Board of Education member training, and that new members must be trained no later than 1 year after assuming office. So this is a change. In the past, I know that our municipal, I'm not sure exactly the term, but we do have municipal guidelines that do require Board of Education members to be trained. This is a law that requires that training. So you can see where the city of Hartford is ahead of the law, because we've required that for years. but there is required training no less than a year before you begin. And now it will be offered by the Connecticut State Department of Education. They will, I'm sorry, not offer it, but create and provide new Board of Education member training. So it could be that they create the training in collaboration with CAVE or and or other organizations, and that training will be required for board members who join the board this year or any subsequent year. Let's see, also in Public Act 23-167 is the new school climate policy and bullying complaint form. There's new terminology, and there will also be redefining the school climate roles and improvement plan, the climate improvement plan. So those changes have to be in place and ready for the start of the 25-26 school year. However, the Connecticut State Department of Education will be developing, and CAVE also will be developing the materials and resources needed for this policy revision. And we anticipate it may not be available until the spring of this year, but it's good to know that we actually don't have to have something in place until the 25-26 school year. So that does give us time to receive the updated policy from the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, as well as the materials that the State Department may generate, and socialize them with our community so that our community is aware of how we are integrating those resources and updating and revising and refining our policy and bullying material. So there are a lot of changes. I'm not going to dig into a lot of these, but I do want to highlight some of them. There was Public Act 23-208, which requires children to be 5 years old on or before September 1st of that school year when they enter kindergarten. And that is effective next July. So I just want to make sure that our board is aware that beginning next July, the legislative change requires children to be 5 on September 1st who are entering kindergarten. And that is a change for us. Right now, it is required that they be 5 by December 31st. And so that is a change, and that will impact our families as well. So I'm sure that you're thinking about those things, especially Pastor AJ. I know you have young children. So thinking about
Yeah, I'm sitting here. My wife is listening, and she's like, my 3-year-old will have to do 2 years of pre-K 4 with that law. So I don't know. I don't know. But continue, yeah.
And I know too that Hartford has a lot of pre-K programs that are operated by our public schools as well as by our community partners. Oh, I see Mr. Ledger has a question.
Yep, you're recognized, Francois, board member.
Thank you so much. So I've been following this legislation, and I think about Montessori because in Montessori, there's at the primary level, children usually start around 2 years, 9 months, or 3 years old. But I'm interested to see how this will affect the Montessori program, and if there's any way to consider the 3-year cycle and the age range with regards to that. So that's something that we're looking at.
I appreciate that. Dr. Silver, from our policy standpoint with the upcoming session, is this something that maybe Hartford can kind of cheerlead and stand in front of? Because I mean, it sounds like my 3-year-old is going to have to repeat a grade twice before he can move forward. So, is just from your perspective, Lori, Attorney Mazurek, from your perspectives, is this something that we can maybe add an amendment to the policy or to the legislation this upcoming session, since it's not a budget session? This is probably going to be a strict policy session at the Capitol. Is this something that maybe we can raise and maybe see if we could follow through just on the Hartford side? And I'm sure we'll gather supporters along the way, because I mean, the minute you say that a child has to stay behind twice in the same classroom 2 years, you know, you might as well call it a daycare, not a school. So anything on your end that we can maybe lead or create?
Thank you, Pastor AJ. I know that we could certainly do some research, and I'm sure that Attorney Mizrak would be a big help in doing that research. And also we have a legislative committee as well. So Christina, I believe you have a better handle on that committee than I do in terms of when it meets and what items, how items are added to that agenda. But I certainly see where that could be added as a discussion item in a future agenda for the legislative committee.
Yeah, I will bring it up with Phil, and I know AJ, you sit on that committee or task force as well, so
Mhm.
you bring it to his attention.
Okay. Not to expand a dialogue, but you know I see it from my perspective, but is that common sense policy in your mind, Dr. Silver and Lori, and just other voices on the line? Do you see the value in that? I also see Mr. Walker's hand, so I want to recognize Mr. Walker first. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to hear, I think, more educators weigh in on this. To me, we're talking about child development. And so what I'm envisioning in terms of, if I look at the policy as it exists today, you can have someone who's slightly more than 4.5 entering the classroom with someone who may be 5.5 or halfway to, to 6. And so you can have a situation where a certain child is always the youngest and is kind of developmentally behind their peers in some ways. And so I think that there needs to be some balancing of what's the goal that this is trying to achieve. And potentially, I think, to Pastor AJ, to your point, if we change the rule on the one end, right, is there an opportunity to beef up the pre-K program? Because if this policy would have children staying in pre-K a bit longer, and so there may be an opportunity to kind of beef that up as opposed to it being merely kind of repetitive. So I would just share that there may be some value to having a child be developmentally close to their peers when they're entering kindergarten and entering first grade. But I want to hear some educators and others kind of weigh in on that fact.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Silver? Lori, spend a couple minutes on this. We ain't got to spend all day on it.
I see Ms. Brody was here. And has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Ms. Brody, I'm sorry. I'm on my iPad and I got to scroll through to see people's hands. So by all means, if you see a hand that I don't see, please call it out. Go ahead, Ms. Brody. And welcome.
Good morning. So I'm assuming my view is I asked Miss Santiago and she said it says 5. I know like say for instance North Carolina, they have it that if you've attended and apologize if I missed if this was said, if you have attended a preschool in a school system that's not like a daycare, they have that policy. You can't, if you're born after, it's probably similar to the September 1st. But the exception is if you attended like Rawson pre-K, like it was in a school system that you're allowed to, but if it was just, if you didn't attend at any, if at a home daycare or at a daycare, you could not. So I don't know if we have that flexibility or it's just plain black and white. And because I have a friend who actually moved to North Carolina. That's how I know so much about it. And the child was born in November and she had to fight. But the reasoning they were giving is the emotional maturity. Like they're just not mature to absorb what, was going to be taught. And they start school a full month
Earlier,
almost
yeah.
before us. So, but there was an exception, and it was that when the child was in Connecticut, they went to not a preschool, they went in the school system in a school system pre-K program.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like I said, when we first went through this last week, my spirit had some rejection to this, but I didn't want to, overthink it because I'm assuming that those folks up there at the Capitol are looking out for the best interests of all of our students. And but sometimes things that are put in place sometimes put stress on other systems, right? And so, I think this unintendedly is going to put stress on daycares to to hold students longer. It's just going to put pressure on another system. So to your point, Christina, what we can do is obviously bring this to the our legislative committee that we do have, but also Dr. Silver and Lori, any research that we can find to support our effort in the legislative body and just putting this in a public space would be certainly helpful. Because as I stated, it as of now, it feels like my son is going to stay back in the same room twice in the Montessori model. And so Shantae, Board Member Brody, thank you so much for elevating that. Dr. Silver, I think unless there's any other dramatic pieces of legislation like that on this update, I'm going to trust that my board members will look through. And if we would like to create a specific time to go through this updated policy one by one, maybe in a workshop setting or just add another meeting, I think that would be useful. And I think that might be useful for all board members, actually, if maybe placing another date in the calendar before school starts might be rough, but somewhere just to say, hey, let's go through these policies together and see where we land, but also see if there's any opportunities for Hartford to step and take lead on amending something that makes sense. But let's continue.
Okay, thank you so much. These are great questions and concerns, and we certainly do have a lot of opportunity to educate ourselves and our community about the changes from the legislative session. There are a couple other changes that I just want to bring to your awareness. One is that we do need to update our graduation policy for the graduating class of 2027. And that is to include a half credit in financial literacy for our high school students. So that's upcoming for the class of 2027. Our legislators are very caring. They have an act concerning the mental, physical, and emotional wellness of children. Title IX compliance. They're actually creating a Title IX compliance toolkit for school districts. And Title IX is the kind of the umbrella term. It affects sports and it affects gender disparities in the educational setting. So any organization that receives federal funding is hard to abide by Title IX. So there are some implications there for us. And I'm going to go back to this is just a summary of some of the House bills and revisions And certainly the legislative update that you have access to will help you. I also have in the slide deck that I want to share with you is a link to information about how a bill becomes a law in Connecticut, which I thought would be helpful for people. And you're welcome to look at this at your leisure. But basically takes us from a bill that's proposed and, you know, what is the difference between an HB or House bill and an SB or Senate bill? And how does it become a public act? So this takes us, this little flow chart takes us through this. So just to help us learn a little bit and share a little bit with our community, based on the updates from our legislative session, as well as the, again, continuing the work that CABE identified for us in 2021, when the average age of a policy in our manual was close to 30 years old. We do have continued updates, revisions, and recodifications, and so we have a schedule, a policy calendar. We certainly don't want to call it a policy agenda because that implies that we're taking these policies to our legislators, but this is our work and bringing our policies and updating our policies, bringing them to our community. So August 3rd, we had policies for a first reading. September 5th, we had these policies for ages of attendance is what we'll bring for a first reading, and the recoding of the bullying prevention and intervention policy, which we just discussed. Going into October, we're going to talk about food services personnel code of conduct, which is a mandated policy that CABE identified for us, as well as the food services personnel professional standards, again, another mandated policy that CABE identified for us. And we will have the second reading for the attendance. I think this might need to be updated. Let's see. Oh no, because we would do the first reading in September or at our next policy committee meeting. And then we would be able to, maybe we even want to postpone this to so that we can have more conversation internally about this. In November, we're going to talk about our equity policy, and we do have a team that's been working on socializing that policy. I know our board did quite a bit of work with it, and it has been years in the making. And so we had considered bringing it for a second reading to our Board of Education, but really wanted to give our community more time to review it and give us feedback. So we will be on November 9th talking about that policy and the feedback we received from our community and any revisions that we want to make to that language. And then we would have a second reading of the, again, food services, personnel, code of conduct, and professional standards. In December, we're exploring remote work. We have the CABE model policy. We do not have a policy on remote work. And so we are going to be working from the CABE model policy, and also a mandated policy for coach evaluation. So making sure that we are evaluating the coaches that support our young people, our youth in our schools. That would be a first reading, and perhaps the second reading on the equity policy. Moving into February, we will be looking at remote work as a second reading and coach evaluation. We have some space here in February and March because there are additional items. As you may have noticed from the legislative session, there is quite a slate of policies that need to be revisited. So we have not quite finished that kind of granular review of those policies, and we'll need to get the model policy from CABE, excuse me, as well as perhaps Shippen and Goodwin, in order to integrate good thinking into our policy revisions. So there is space in February and March for items on our policy committee. So here's where we have policy. Okay. Oh, hold on. This is October. This is October. Here we go. April. In April, we're looking at adding the financial literacy half credit to the grad requirements, again, for the class of 2027. We like to do things in advance and get things done ahead of time. So this will allow us to nurture that, put that in place for our students to do a first reading for that revision to the graduation policy in April and the second reading in May to add that requirement. And we anticipate that the climate and bullying policy materials, the model policy from CABE, the materials from the Connecticut State Department of Education will become available in April. So we are looking at, or a little bit sooner than April, hopefully, so we can do some socializing in our schools, get feedback from our principals and our teachers and our families before bringing that to our board, to our committee for a first reading in April and a second reading in May. And again, we have some space here because things do come up, as we know. And so that is an overview of our policy calendar for the year so far. And I turn this back over to you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the proposed upcoming policies that we have? This is our effort to be organized and to have clear direction of where we're going. And so, you know, shout out to Dr. Silver for taking time to one, to put this together, but two, in our efforts to be clear on what we're doing and where we're going. I think this helps create the path. So Board Member Walker, go ahead, you have the floor.
Board
Thank you.
member, sorry, Board Member Brody had her hand up first.
Right.
I'm
Thank you.
just-
Appreciate it. Again, like I said, I'm on
Yeah,
my
thank
iPad
you.
and everyone are little boxes on my screen, so I don't see everyone. So my apologies. This is no slight to you, Ms. Brody. Ms. Brody, go ahead.
Thank you. No, I just wanted, after we left the other policy and something that someone said, I think we need to do some community conversations and awareness and around that, changing that that 5-year-old by September. We're gonna have to do some, even though where is the state, you know, that's making this change. Of course, no one's gonna see it like that. They're gonna see it like, oh, it's Hartford Public Schools. So I think we need to do some community awareness
You
around.
need the laptop.
Tyrone, you're not on mute.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah, you know, Ms. Brody, I'm certainly on your wavelength. I was certainly, I was thinking about that for the equity policy, doing a community conversation. That's what dawned on me, but you are absolutely right, particularly on this. This may present an opportunity for us to have a community conversation, maybe bring in some legislators and just talk about what that, what the impact of that is in changing it. And maybe they had this conversation in the education committee when they were doing this on the state level. I would be interested to see what the dialogue around that was. But certainly, at least for Hartford Public Schools, we need to have that conversation. I am in alignment with that. I'm not sure if I see Francois' hand, and I'm not sure. Well, let's do ladies first. Go ahead. Board Member Francois.
Thank you. Well, I want to be fair because Tyrone's hand, Board Member Tyrone's hand was up, next. So he can go. I can wait.
Fair. Thank you for your sacrifice. Board Member Walker.
Yeah, thank you. Francois, thank you, Board Member Darcel Ledger. And apologies. My office is waking up, so people are running at me with stuff. But I did want to give a shout out to Dr. Silver. I totally appreciate the annualized policy calendar. It definitely makes this a more orderly process. And I wanted to note that some of the things that are coming up from a state level, I've seen in the district, like financial literacy, something that's been elevated in the school district for several years and has been launched at least at certain school-based levels and within certain courses, in addition to the concern around bullying has also been elevated. So it kind of aligning with what Board Member Brody is saying, I would like to do some kind of conversations around at a school-based level with community to see what we're currently doing and to look to incorporate some of that. If we're coming up with policy, let's make sure the policy incorporates what we're currently doing as well as complying with the new state mandate, and maybe us get some further alignment and education around what the district is doing in those two areas. And I don't want to make it seem like somehow we're just reacting to what the state's requiring, but I think the district has already launched its own initiatives, and I don't want to lose that momentum with both community and schools that are doing something in these two areas. So that's kind of my comment and as it relates to the policy schedule.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Board Member Francois.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of echo what Board Member Brody proposed with regards to reaching out to the community and having a community conversation, or perhaps more than one conversation, because this will affect, this change, this proposed change will affect many households, many families, and also it will definitely affect the Montessori, the public Montessori program, and any early childhood program that is not daycare, because when children start at age 3 or they start at age 2 years and 9 months, which is usually the requirement for, you know, the earliest that they can start, then, you know, when they get to that kindergarten grade, they might not quite be, you know, 5, or it just affects the whole, you know, the whole flow. So I'm interested to know if we are going to be reaching out to perhaps the Office of Early Childhood Commissioner to see if there's any work being done. I know there's also MPPI, which stands for Montessori Public Policy Initiative, who, you know, they pretty much, they're nationwide, and they go to different states, and they advocate, and they you know, go to the legislators and they present and they talk about, you know, the early childhood, the benefits of you know, Montessori, public Montessori, and, you know, help the legislators, the decision makers with the language. But you know, I just wanted to put that out there, and I'm hoping that we will also the task force that's been created, you know, with the board, the members who are on that, which is you Pastor AJ, who will be, you know, vocal in this area.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I think that this is something that this committee, this policy committee should do, and I think it definitely falls under the auspices of
Pastor AJ,
You went
you're
on
muted.
mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I switched to my iPhone now. I'm just switching devices. Yeah, so I think that this is something that our policy committee could do and kind of take the lead on for the board and the community through the superintendent. So I think that you know, let's start having these conversations and see what makes sense to do. But I certainly think that we can have some real dialogue around this and see where we want to land on this. Again, I'm always in a space, where can Hartford take the lead and where can we fight for our own interests to what makes sense for us. So yeah, I have no issue with what is being said, and we'll move to set a date and have a conversation with the chair and then see if we can line the superintendent up on it. Any other comments, any other concerns regarding the proposed upcoming policies? All right, not hearing or seeing in any.
Sorry, I had my hand up. I put my hand up really quickly.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sure.
So I just wanted to just put this out there that this may also be an opportunity for teaching and learning to collaborate with policy, because this is definitely going to be an opportunity to teach the community, and also for individuals who aren't as versed or educated in the area of Montessori, public Montessori, or early childhood programs to learn.
That is recognized. Thank you. And thank you for pointing out that collaboration. Go ahead, Dr. Silver River.
Yes, thank you so much, Pastor AJ. So I have shared with you our draft of some policies that, of course, this is going to move because we can move that till later in the year. And the CAVE model policy will not be available until probably later in the year. But one of the pieces that you may not be aware of is that when we settle on a policy calendar, I do work with each of the chiefs in the different departments in order to have partnership on policy revisions. So you may remember Ms. Hoffman coming to our meetings, Deb Comides and Dr. McGillican and Chief Avila and Katie Leonard and other members of the academics team. So these revisions are Lori, Attorney Nizrak, and myself work with different members of the public schools staff who have expertise in these areas. Just so you know, it's not done in isolation. It's not a black and white process. We really do consult with other members and experts on our team. And I just want to assure you that that's planned for this calendar of policies as well.
Awesome, thank you.
And if we're summing up then for our next full board meeting, we will bring these policies for a first reading, which is the removal of 5122 and the removal of 5123 and the recodification of the bullying and prevention intervention to 5131.911. And that finishes my portion of information for this meeting. Thank you so much, Pastor AJ.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Silver. Thank you so much to this committee. As you have heard, and what you have seen is that this committee is organized, prepared, and ready to go. And all of the things that we've heard today in terms of public engagement, Christina, I really, as our board liaison, if you can kind of create the concoction where we can start moving this conversation forward that makes sense, particularly around that new policy, and maybe getting some public engagement days where the board can kind of lead and walk through with the community, and maybe, let's just start planning what a day like that would be, or an evening like that would be, to have some discussion with what we've heard today.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Is that the end of our agenda, Dr. Silver? I think it is, from what I remember. All right. Well, look at us getting out of here before 11 o'clock. Well, thank you all so much for your time, and thank you to all the viewers who actually sat down and will watch this policy committee. Again, this policy committee is on fire, and we thank you for watching, and we thank all of my board members for being here. Ms. Brody, Ms. Ledger, Mr. Walker. Thank you, Attorney Mazurek. Thank you, Jesse, and thank you, Dr. Silver and Christina Santiago. Have a wonderful day.